All right, Nyx. Nyx, where are you from originally?
I've been in Southern California my whole life. I was born and raised in the Inland Empire and spent the better part of a decade in Bakersfield before moving to Long Beach.
Tell me about how you grew up.
Um, my my parents, well, my biological father was not in my life. I had one stepfather that when he left my life, it was very devastating, and then another stepfather that he was a very classic malignant narcissist. And my mother, who was the only constant in my life, was also a covert narcissist, though she'll never admit to that. But so I was raised in kind of an upper middle class environment with very suppressive and abusive parents, not necessarily in the physical sense, but all in the emotional sense. And I had multiple sexual traumas growing up that like kind of influenced me today, ironically in a good way, in the sense that they helped me be more empathetic to a lot of different people. There's actually been moments when I've cried because I feel bad because my abusers were also abused, and I sympathize for them in that sense.
It's great that you're able to see it that way.
it,
Most people are quick to hate.
I think I have my own dash of bitterness that the years have bestowed upon me, but I am actively fighting through that as best as I can, because I really don't like being angry all the time. And that's kind of why I always choose to look at things in an empathetic sense. I want to be able to understand people, but when I understand them, it means you have to also understand their pain. And I relate so much to so many different people's pain that I kind of take it on myself. So
Yeah, I believe understanding is the key to forgiveness, and forgiveness is the key to not being angry.
exactly. And forgiveness is hard. It's when you're trying to when you're trying to force yourself to forgive, it's not something that you can make yourself do. You have to get to that point. You have to make the decision you want to do it, and then take the process, which means feeling the anger to a certain extent. You have to express it and feel it to be able to get past it. And I think that that's the hardest part for me as well, just because it's not something I like doing. It's not something I like feeling. And so allowing myself to express that is very hard. So
What kind of teenager were you?
I was, I was a weird kid. I was the chubby kid in my class, all in elementary school, middle school, and in high school, I was the girl with braces that didn't fit into any group, and I didn't have a lot of friends. My parents didn't let me go out and do a lot of stuff. I didn't get into a lot of trouble. I was really suppressed and lonely as a teenager. I was by myself like 99% of the time. And I mean, I didn't even lose my virginity until I was 18. And like this same month, I tried weed, alcohol, and lost my virginity altogether. And that was after I had left my parents' house when I was 18. And so, I mean, before then, very just kept to myself, like kind of the kid that was always listening to her headphones, and just very like suppressed is really the only word that I can think of to describe how I would see myself back then. Because I've always been a very emotional person, and emotions were not rewarded within my household.
So you've engaged in this fetish lifestyle now as an adult.
Yes.
How long has that been going on?
Well, I was introduced to polyamory first at the age of 24. I had actually already had my son that earlier in the year, and I met this girl on, I think it was OkCupid, of all a random site, but on there I met her, and I was actually looking for friends at the time, and she kind of introduced me to this whole idea of what polyamory was. And I remembered in high school, I always had a list of people that I was crushing on at the time. It was never just one person that I was solely focused on. And because of that, like, I always got called like boy crazy. And, you know, I always felt very ashamed about it. And when she kind of brought up to me the idea that her and her partner had other partners that didn't necessarily all have to commingle and all this other stuff, I was like, wait, so you can like more than one person and not be a bad person? And it was like I had been introduced to a whole different idea, because monogamy is so shoved down your throat in our culture and society that, like, I didn't actually even comprehend that there was another option that was okay. And so I started kind of like indulging a little bit into the lifestyle. My prior relationship, who I was also with at the time, he was very insecure, and began to be physically abusive later on in the relationship. And we didn't have a dynamic of anything that I would consider healthy polyamory. Like, it was like a one penis policy. And then there was also the fact that, like, he was very controlling, but then wouldn't take control of anything. So he did nothing. He was very lazy. And so I was constantly, you know, picking up the pieces, you know, especially with the kids and stuff. And so I didn't feel like I really started to indulge in the fetish lifestyle until, I want to say, 2020, although we had been poly for about 8 years prior to that. But I didn't really get to experience what a real polyamorous relationship would be like until much later.
A lot of men seem to enjoy polyamory in their lives, but they do it in secret.
Right.
Whereas a lot of women, when a woman does it, things don't go so well for.
And that happens so often. I mean, it baffles me how polyamory is looked down upon so much when cheating is so readily accepted in so many different, like, social circles that I've been in. And it's like, how can you, like, what about the honesty part of it is it that turns you off from all of this? Like, that's the part that, for me, I love being able to share that part of myself with my partner. Like, and because I'm a dork that loves, like, falling in love. And so when I have a partner that I'm in love with, that I can share a new love with, that is just like the best of both worlds. And it's like, but I've never liked cheating. Like, but it's so accepted amongst men. And, like, that just as a culture, just like, it's expected that men are going to cheat. Like, my family used to tell me all men leave. And that's so terrible to say. And it's one of those, like, we as a society don't accept people and then wonder why everyone doesn't feel accepted. And it baffles me, because you're absolutely right that it's, especially as a female, like, being able to come out and say, I enjoy multiple partners. Well, now you're labeled as a slut immediately. And it's one of those, well, no, that doesn't seem fair, because a guy can be having sex with his wife and have an affair and not be considered a slut. So where's the boundary there? Is that, like, I seem to be missing the concept of, but
Well, it's not fair.
it's not. But most of our society isn't fair towards men or women. I mean, men can't use sex toys and not be stigmatized for it, which I think is ridiculous, because I don't see anything. I don't understand what the difference between a pussy pocket and a dildo is. They're the same thing for different gender, and not even different genders, but different, like, you know, types of orgasm for different people. And it's like, I don't understand why men can't use, because I've been with people who use sex toys like cock rings and the, like, penis pumps, and it gets very engorged. It's very big after that. And it's like, it's not necessarily it's going to make your dick bigger, but what it does is it gives you the different sensations, and it gives you all these other kinds of, like, experiences. And it's like, why aren't we readily accepting that? Whereas women can have things like the rabbit, and, like, a woman knows exactly what the rose is and what the rabbit is. It's because we as females are expected to get those. but like men can't, and I don't understand that at all. But
Maybe that's why men cheat.
Exactly, because most men don't think that they can go to their partner and say, hey, I am sexually fantasizing about having you and another woman, and have that woman go, awesome, let's go find the other woman. And like, I suppose that that's one of the things about me that makes me very unique, I guess, to a certain extent. Not unique as in I'm the only one, but in a societal standpoint, not a lot of people like me exist where I'm just like, yes, let's go. And I'm primarily like on the website that we're on, I want a female partner for myself is actually what I'm looking for. Because men are in my DMs all day long, and while I have had some sexual interactions with other guys, it's more about finding that sexual and emotional connection with another woman that I'm hoping for. I have never found a sexual partner that like satisfies me as much as my fiance does. I've literally never been with someone who indulges in all of my different kinds of like kinks and things like that, and is readily willing to indulge in more of them, like at the drop of a hat. Whereas for me, I think that there could be so much more that we could both have, both in and out of the bedroom, that I want to like facilitate for us with, another partner. But I also like love that idea of being with a woman, because there's something about that emotional aspect of she's just so soft and like cuddly, and like I enjoy cuddling and like kissing on women, whereas like guys enjoy kissing on me, and I'm like, ooh, like I've had so many bad experiences with dudes. So it's one of those like, I just want to like give out a female that like love and like affection that I know that we all crave a little bit, like because of the way society does treat us. We all kind of are looked at in a certain light of like delicacy, and it's like, I know you're not delicate, I know that you are just gorgeous, and that you've never believed when a guy says it, because I know I don't. And so it's kind of like a weird societal aspect to it, but at the same time my own personal desires mixed in with it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, you can't really ever hope for total fairness, because like if you brought home another girl,
mm-hmm.
your fiance would probably think, oh, that's kind of fun. Whereas if he brought home another dude, that's a whole nother thing.
I don't know. See, for me, that's actually, it's weird because I know that I'm pansexual.
For him.
But he's straight. But even if he brought home another guy and like it was for me.
No, for him.
See, yeah, it's hard for me to put myself in that headspace only because he's so heterosexual.
That's what I'm saying. This whole thing is just a stupid argument.
No, it's not a stupid argument. No, I like the idea.
Because men don't bring home other men. Women can bring you. Guys almost hope their girl brings home another girl.
You know what though? But there's a whole like subsection of like men who are on the DL, it says, and it's like
there's a lot of them.
They would love to bring home another man, but they don't feel like that they would ever be accepted to do so. And I'm on that like
it's very secretive.
I'm on that train where it's like, hey, if that's what you want, bring them home. Like I'm fine with that. I actually wouldn't have a problem with it, like personally. I think that, and we've actually explored it, and like that's how I know how heterosexual he really kind of is. More like hetero-flexible, but it's one of those like I know that that's not something he would do. That's why I wasn't in that headspace. But if he did, I would want to facilitate that just as much. Like that's actually not something that would bother me in the slightest. Because I think that sexual like expression, no matter what the form is, should be accepted. And I know that like the bisexual community as a whole is kind of looked at like, oh, you're just not fully out of the closet yet, or oh, you're just confused. And it's one of those like, well, I don't agree with that at all. And so I think for my perspective, that's not something that would be a problem. But, and he's not necessarily having to engage when I do bring a female home. It's one of those, like, if it's for me, it's for me, and he's cool with that. Because I actually have a girl that I see semi-regularly, but she's not interested in him. And so it's been a fun dynamic trying to work that one out, but it's also something that he, like I said, because he's so willing to indulge me, in all of my desires, especially the sexual desires, that it's not really been a problem for either of us.
Does it hurt or enhance your relationship with him when you're bringing home other partners, female?
I think that depending on the way that we both approach it, it could do both. Because I know that we've both had kind of a rocky relationship start. I mean, our last relationships were both very traumatic. And because of that, we've tend to have our own toxic responses and trauma responses to it. And we've done things that we're both not proud of in that sense. And I think the fact that we're so in love that we've decided to continue a relationship after some of the things at the very beginning that we've both done, it's coming to the table with something of an understanding for one another now, because we see where we can have fault and where we can kind of be, what's what I'm looking for? It's like a risk to one another. Because we've both been so hurt by our prior relationships that we don't want to hurt anymore. So we're very guarded, but at the same time, we want to protect the other person while protecting ourselves. So it's as long as we're open in our communications, it's enhanced exponentially our relationship. But I think it's been the times when we have a hard time opening up to the other person because of that fear and that shame that creeps in of fetish world. It comes down to that's the time that it can actually hurt our relationship too.
There's so many options out there for couples now that it just becomes a
lot more than there used to be.
A very complicated landscape for people.
Very much.
What other things have you gotten into?
Well, so recently we've been indulging. The past about year, I've had a Pornhub account, and so we've been filming, and we've done a couple professional things when it comes to that as well. But and we enjoyed that very much. I personally loved taking pictures before I met him, and so that was something that I kind of wanted to continue. And he's slowly kind of gotten engrossed by it as well while we have been performing. But in the past, I want to say month or two, we've started doing, and I always pronounce this wrong, exhibitionism, and where we've discovered that we love being watched, just by other people. We went to a party, and I was one of two females that were there. It was us as a couple, and then another couple, and then there was 10 other guys. Very uncomfortable, because it was supposed to be many other people than that. But I ended up laying on the bed, and he put on a demonstration with some of the bondage. I think he used the flogger, the paddle, and then what's the other whip, and I cannot think of the name of it all of a sudden. But so we've been using different kinds of toys and stuff like that. But he put on a demonstration in front of everyone with while I had the blindfolds on, and that was extremely fun. Especially because you could hear all the commentary in the background and people just adjusting in their seats and all this other stuff, and it was that's really a fun little turn on, just to know that people are watching and that they are getting just as much enjoyment out of it as I am.
How long have you guys been together?
Almost 3 years. Yeah, we met in July of 2020.
And do you guys see your appetite for fetish behavior expanding, or is it kind of what it is?
Oh no, it's definitely expanding. See, because I have not indulged enough into it to know what I like or dislike. So there are certain things that intrigue me, but I'm not sure if I would actually enjoy the actual act of that thing. And then there's things that have surprised me during our first swap, as a swinging kind of couple. Watching him have sex with this other female was so arousing and so just I was so into it that I was taken aback, because I was like, I can be kind of a jealous person. I was not expecting to love watching him do that so much, given my jealousy aspects. And so because of that, I was just kind of like, oh, that is something that I didn't think that I would enjoy, and I do. And because of that, now a whole other door of being able to watch without having to swap, or being able to have like just other women come in, but I don't have to engage. I can just, it has become a whole other aspect that now I have new experimentation to look into to see if I like it. And then there's still that possibility I won't. But I know that that's something I want to explore now. And with him, it's been the fact that polyamory is even a thing. Like, because like I said, he had been in only monogamous relationships. So for him, it's expanding into, see, it had started with the emotional expansion, but now the sexual expansion and being able to have me there is something huge for him. There have been, you know, we've never physically cheated on each other or anything like that, but there's been times when he was talking and I was talking to other people, and we weren't sharing that with one another, and it made it feel terrible.
Has he watched you with another male partner?
Well, when we did the swap, for sure. I'm trying to think. Oh, and then there was. It wasn't where he just watched. He was also experiencing. But I have been in 2 male, female threesomes with him at this point, and we've been in 1 female, male threesome. I'm trying to think if there was another one. No, I'm sorry. There were 2. There were 2 for that, and then. But mostly we've done swaps with other couples, and there's been 2 or 3 of those as well. I think that's about it, though, as far as the sexual, like, actual expansion has gone. Although we have another couple that's going to come over, like, this evening. I'm going to make dinner, and we were going to swap with them. They're in town, and we like meeting the new people and, like, kind of trying to set stuff up. It's kind of like a 1 in every 5 actually lands, and we, you know, meet up with them or something. But it's given us, like, an aspect of social life that we both kind of lost during COVID and during our trauma responses, that we kind of just, like, became reclusive, and we're both very social people. So being able to indulge in that again and kind of bring out this whole other aspect of kink in our lives has been really fun. Because my last relationships were all very vanilla. So to walk around and have a collar put on me, and he'll literally put the leash on me too. And it's like, that's how I wear that's how I am the whole party. And he's got the leash in the hand unless he gives it to me. And it's kind of funny just because I love doing it so much. And I wonder where that fetish came from. Cause I think that all fetishes have a psychological connection somewhere, either to trauma or your childhood in some way. There's some sort of connection. And given that, like, I'm like, where the hell did that one come from?
Do you think the sexual abuse that you went through as a kid somehow plays into this?
I definitely do, to a certain extent. I know that different aspects of it have come into play in, like, the pornography that I like to watch and things like that. And I think as I've been explained it by my therapist, years ago, it comes down to, sometimes it's about reenacting the abuse almost, but this time you have the control that you didn't have back then. Now you are taking control of an experience, and you get to give yourself that power back and relive it the way that you've always wanted to relive it, and give yourself that kind of, because if I say stop, I know he'll stop. And that's one of those things that I may have been, because I also know that my mother was physically abusive, and I enjoy certain types of physical pain during sex. And I know that, again, that comes down to that. I know that if I say that's too much and pull back, he's there to, whether it's him doing it or someone else, that he'll be there to protect me and keep that from escalating to a point when I can no longer enjoy it. And giving myself that enjoyment during the experience gives me that freedom to let go of that, like, past trauma. Because I understand that it happened and I didn't enjoy that experience, but now I have this experience to overlap with that same response, if that makes sense. And so that way I don't have to worry about the pain that I suffered, because that pain can also be correlated with pleasure.
Have you ventured off a little bit too far for your comfort level?
Not quite yet. I think in the past, I had indulged in some role play online and things like that had definitely ventured way into uncomfortability, stuff like with certain people. And I ended up just cutting that aspect out for a while, just because I didn't have a trusted partner in which I could have that role play with without it getting to a point of, this is not what I'm talking about whatsoever, like type thing. And it got to, it just became kind of like something that it was no longer enjoyable, and it was no longer related to my trauma, and it was creating a whole new trauma at that point.
Communication is key, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. So,
what advice would you give to somebody who's curious about this polyamorous lifestyle?
Baby steps first. And communication is paramount. If your partner is not okay with polyamory, it comes down to you either need to understand yourself and not engage in a, non-ethical way. But also, it's about being able to understand yourself without necessarily forcing your partner to be in an uncomfortable, position for themselves. Because I understand that some people are not built for polyamory. Some people are just not going to understand it, and it's gonna cause them pain. And even people like myself, like I've been polyamorous my whole life. I didn't know that that's what I was, but I am. And there are going to be times that monogamy is necessary to gain trust and to gain that kind of like connection with your partner. And when those times are necessary, you have to decide, is my venture into polyamory what's most important, or is it my need to have a connection with this person? Because that is going to come into play at some point. You're going to have that internal battle of, I really want this, but how much more do I want that than do I want them? And unfortunately, like with my past relationship, because it was sexually unsatisfying as well as emotionally and financially unsatisfying, venturing into the polyamorous lifestyle when he wasn't really into it was definitely something that became more important to me, because of the fact that he was abusive and neglectful, and this idea of not even being able to be myself in that relationship or even talk to him about it without it being a fight, that was where I felt like everything kind of started to go downhill. And I think for me, it was really hard to come to terms with that, because I do see my own toxic behavior in that and my own selfishness. But you're gonna need to be selfish sometimes in your life. And that's part of the advice I would give too, is that sometimes it's okay to be selfish. I think that if you've tried to talk to your partner about it and they're just not receptive and not understanding, and that there's no reasons why that if you can give them options on how to feel secure and connected, and you still get to indulge in your own needs, and they're not willing to do that, you have to make that selfish choice somehow. Because suppressing yourself your whole life is only going to lead you to like being miserable. And I would know, I mean, I was with him for 11 years, and I suppressed myself in 90% of that relationship. And it was miserable. Even though I cared a lot about him, and we were both very much alike in our humor and a lot of things, and I still look back and think, wow, I really lost like one of my best friends when everything went down between us. I was never happy because I was so suppressed and I couldn't be myself. And because of that, everything, blew up in our faces. And that and many other reasons. But I would definitely say that if you have the option and you need to be selfish, it's okay to be selfish sometimes. But it's not okay to just indulge in a selfish lifestyle 24/7. I think that there's definitely a very fine line of when it's okay and when it's not. And I think that line changes for every person and every dynamic, because every polyamorous relationship is going to be different. And that's probably another piece of advice to give, is that you have to figure out where you are, where they are, and where you both can kind of meet in the middle, but also understand that nobody else is going to be able to understand your dynamic quite like you guys can. Because the only two people that matter really are the ones in the relationship, or not two people. The only people that matter are the ones in the relationship. If you add another person into the dynamic, they matter as well, and their opinions matter. And what they need in the relationship matters, and you have to be able to indulge in that. And you have to feel like they're both indulging in that for you as well. And that's the only way a cohesive unit is going to be able to form and have that foundation of a real, because what I've always wanted is a kitchen table poly, which is, everybody can kind of live in the same house. We all, chip in for the responsibilities, and we can all go and engage outside or inside the home however we please. And we're all very accepting of that. And to be able to have that kind of relationship, you have to have a foundation of trust and connection. And that is the only way that I think that you can do it, is by listening and trying to meet their needs, and then also being willing to let them meet your needs. Because I think that that's something that we all struggle with, is just being okay with somebody else, knowing that vulnerability of us and then letting them indulge in it.
All right. Nyx, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wish you and your fiance a lot of great years. Thank you.
Thank you.